Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 182. So glad you could join me. Today's guest, Sarah Etlinger, is here. She'll be with us in about 15 minutes. But before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do this because we love poetry, and I know you do too. So please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell for notifications, leave reviews on iTunes and Spotify, anything like that you can do. Tell your friends the old-fashioned way. Just say, hey, I watched the Rattlecast the other day, and it was really cool. You should check it out. That always helps. We just want to spread poetry around the internet. Anything you can do to help that would be much appreciated. Now, as always, we like to start with the Poets Respond poets. And we have two this week. We have Sundays that everybody's already read, and a Tuesday poem that'll be a surprise to everybody who's watching this live. And let's go right now to Sunday's poet, Shannan Mann. Hey, Shannan,
Hi.
how you doing?
Hi. I'm doing really well, thank you.
Yeah, it's so great to see you. So
Yeah.
so tell us what this poem is about. It's I mean, we kind of know by the title, but
Yeah.
how did you come about? How did you encounter this for the first time, and what made you want to write a poem about the new AI?
We'd been hearing things kind of about it circulating online. We, as in me and my partner, Karen, he's here as well. Hi.
Yeah, great. Yeah, readers really familiar with Rattle with Karen. He's been in Rattle very often as well, so it's great to see you two together.
It's my favorite magazine.
Both
Thanks.
of ours. Yeah, so then we read the article from the Atlantic, and we found it really interesting. So just for fun, we also tried a couple of the AI generators, and it was stupid, but also silly and fun. But we also thought about how there can be probably in the future more. It feels silly to say it now, but like dangerous implications of it. But there really probably are with all of these things that kind of creep into technology and become so normal that you kind of don't even miss when things weren't like this. And yeah, so we thought, well, the only thing that we know how to do about these kind of things is to write a poem. So let's write a poem. And as the poem's narrative goes, it's pretty similar, like trying to see what we can take from the AI poem and how we can actually write a real poem, which I'm like air quoting, but I probably shouldn't.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, let's read the poem first, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more after, so everybody who hasn't read it yet can get a chance to.
Okay. I ask AI to write a poem for my lover, and it writes me a red flag. According to science, love enters midlife crisis at 17 months. We are at 11. 6 more months, I tell him, until the AI poem assembled from our woe and woo world prophesizes our war. But we're having fun with this. We're piecing together a bread loaf from crumbs like fire and flour. Change flour, Kay says. We scroll through a list of color and smell, settle on lilies, cut and paste them beside the lonely cursor. He claims a poem is not just the poem, but the place it came from, too. I claim annoyance with ether, with technology selling water by the river. And just as we want to scrape together a sonnet, a power cut obliterates the Wi-Fi. Our screen goes black. The sonnet of ones and zeros yawns behind the glass. We bite our lungs shut in the prosthetic night, kiss like snow on windshields. Our fingers flicker against skin, trace a minefield of muscle along spine. Clothes crumble, words linger like spiders beneath the toilet bowl, their bowstring legs attempting to weave a world despite all the shit. AI wouldn't write shit into a love poem, he says. Wouldn't feel urge I do to write you poems, fix you dinner, speak to you differently in bed than I do at the table. Your words aren't more yours than in a poem. You do not own language, but these birds on a wire are yours alone.
Yeah, beautiful poem. And there have been a lot of poems coming in about AI, and there's sort of an anxiety that a lot of poets have about this replacing us, kind of. And what's the point if you can generate poems like this and have sort of AI write poems for you? What was your experience with it? Do you think? I mean, I can't decide what to think myself. If it's going to be the kind of thing where, if right now, if you trained AI on our own poems? Would we generate poems like our poems, and would there be meaning still? Is it like that, or is it like, does it feel like it'll never happen? What was your experience like with using it in that way?
So to be honest, I feel like it's happened even without AI, in the sense that, the internet's become such a large part of our world that, so like even when we write, when Karen and I write, for example, it says there, change flower, he says. I mean, that's a real thing that he said.
Mm-hmm.
So then we're kind of brainstorming flowers, what flowers to use, so like, we're not sitting in a field, we're sitting at home on the internet. So then we Google like beautiful flowers and we look up lilies, right? So there's some aspect of the technical and the ether kind of within this very organic thing that is poetry. But and I was also thinking how we think about writing, and some writing can be very formulaic. So there are certain, like, for example, mystery genres or rom-coms and all these beach reads. And even within that writing, people follow a certain kind of prompt and course. But I think that what distinguishes even formulaic writing, or kind of looking on the internet for inspiration and ideas to incorporate into a poem, is, as that Atlantic article also said, is the very kind of human essence of wanting to do something with what you're touching and feeling around, or just seeing on the internet, and you're wanting to change it from what it is into something else. And this transformation, I think, requires a very human touch. So I'm pretty positive that there will always be a space for organic poetry. However, even within our landscape now, not to kind of jump on anybody's bad side, I think there already are extremely formulaic writers and poets who are very popular, mm-hmm. and who also inspire people to read, and then people take them as kind of their gateway drug, and get into like the better writers. So I think we're already kind of coexisting alongside that world in some way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's similar to maybe the Renaissance painters. I can't remember what the names of the devices they used, but there were certain ones where you had a lens and you could look at like what you were drawing to kind of trace over it for the first time. Yeah. And then, or like a pinhole camera projecting the image on the wall and on the canvas, and they'd be painting and tracing over it, and they were hiding it from everybody. Like, I'm not using this. You can't look at my methods. Yeah. And then that's really what they'd be doing, apparently. And then the same thing with like a thesaurus. If you're a formal poet looking up rhymes, is it okay to use a thesaurus? So maybe there's this way that, or even for me, I think it's too fast to write by hand. I couldn't do it without a keyboard for me. Yeah. And same, so is that the same? Like, how much is an assist and how much is not is a real interesting question. And I don't know. We'll see. I think a lot of it, what I've seen so far, is just sort of word salad coming out of AI. It doesn't seem like it has original thoughts. But I don't know how long until it does. So it'll be fascinating to see. And I don't know, I guess we'll find out. But it's really cool to see you explore this. And I think I should mention, too, Brian O'Sullivan, who's usually here. I think he's going to be here for the open lines. He had an AI write a poem with shit in it just to prove it would. He kind of talked it into it. And so he said he might share it later tonight if you stick around.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, but it's a lot of fun, just seeing what we can do with all this stuff. Thanks for sharing that poem. Always a pleasure. Just love your work. And you have a poem coming up on Friday, too, that wonderful ghazal that was,
oh, yes.
Yeah, a Rattle Poetry Prize finalist. So that'll be the daily poem on Friday that everybody can look forward to as well. Thanks, Shannan. It's always a pleasure seeing you, and seeing Karan over there, too, in the corner.
Yes.
Yeah, there he is.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Yeah, that was Shannan Mann with Sunday's poem. I ask AI to write a poem for my lover. They're calling from India, of course, so very early in the morning. Maybe they can go back to bed. Now let's see tomorrow's poem. We're going to have a preview of what we have on tap for tomorrow. And Claire Cross is here. Are you there, Claire?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, yeah, great to see you. Yeah.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, and so you have a totally different topic for the poem that
yes, I do.
You're doing tomorrow. So can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you're doing?
Yes, there was the article a while ago about a pigeon that was found that had been dyed pink, presumably for a gender reveal party. And it was taken to a rehabilitation center, but it died. And they said that it had very strong fumes, and they said it essentially suffocated. And of course, people were horrified by this, and I was horrified. And I thought, who would do such a thing? And then I went, oh, wait, I did something kind of like that myself. Because when I was in the 6th grade, I did a science fair project that was attempting to color baby chicks by injecting dye into fertilized eggs. So that had me thinking about just treatment of animals in that science fair, and the fact that while I was horrified at something that had been done to an animal, I had done something very similar myself. And the poem came out of that.
Yeah, it's so interesting when the news triggers memory, and I probably hadn't thought of that in a very long time, right? About that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's something too that was just great about this poem, about the honesty that you bring to it. And I don't know, there's a way that just if we tell our stories honestly, it's always interesting, and that was the case with this poem. Is that a thing that you always pursue in your poems, like trying to be open and honest?
Yeah, I try to. I think it can be helpful sometimes when you admit something bad about yourself and you're not trying to have this facade of always being a perfect person. So yeah, I do feel like I had to be very honest in writing this about what I had done.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's hear it. This is Pigeon Dyed Pink. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
I too colored birds, or tried to. Mine didn't hatch. Every day I peered into the yellow incubators, hoping to see a cracked shell, a blood spot, a beak, something to tell me I'd have bright chicks like I saw at the state fair and could bring to the science fair. After we gave up, my father buried the eggs out back, broke them first to see. I was too sad to watch, but my sister remembers a dead chick, brilliant blue, like the food coloring I'd injected, my 10-year-old fingers pushing the hypodermic's plunger after carefully poking small holes. I wrote out a schedule for turning the eggs. Everyone played mother hen. My brother, who stayed up late, turned them at night, my mother at dawn. How I longed for those chicks, red, blue, green. How I pictured them, pretty and purple and soft. And then it was over. Nothing but broken shells, dead embryos. I still made a poster for the science fair, set out empty incubators, talked to judges, somehow won a first prize. My brother built a computer and won first outstanding. But in this year, this 1969, when everyone knew Christian Barnard's name, the boy who sliced open 2 rats, moved a heart from one chest to another, called this a transplant, counted 10 heartbeats and said the rat lived. That boy got his picture in the newspaper, his 2 dead rats right there on the front page.
Yeah, it's a beautiful poem, and just in its honesty, like I said. And that's one of the topics that I think in the future we'll be talking about a lot, just the way we treat animals and as if they're not like living beings. There's just sort of a holocaust going on every day all across the world at all times. And, that rats are such social animals and they play and laugh, to think that, and then, using them as science experiments was one of the things that I always felt troubled by when I was working in biology back in the day. Is that, I don't know, is that something you think about often, or is that just something that this memory pulled up?
It's something I think about quite a bit. I think that the way that we tend to think about animals is it's very strange. Like this pigeon that died, for instance, they said that normally these pigeons are used for food. If someone had taken it and killed it and eaten it, nobody would think twice about it. So I think we're very, I don't want to say hypocritical. We're just not consistent. We're not consistent. That people can get very upset about animal cruelty, but then you cannot see the cruelty that you're participating in yourself.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on anytime a story like this comes up too. But thanks for writing this great poem, and it's going to be the daily poem tomorrow. And great to meet you, Claire, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Yep, take care.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Claire Cross with tomorrow's poem, Pigeon Dyed Pink. That'll be the daily poem on Rattle.com. If you're not signed up for the daily poem, go to Rattle.com/sign up and just sign up for the daily poem. You'll get the new poem every day in your email inbox. You'll also get notices about who the guests are on the Rattlecast and what we're doing on the Critique of the Week and deadlines and things like that at the very bottom too. So sign up if you don't. It's a good, one email, just not too much clutter in your inbox. Might as well join 15,000 other people getting that daily poem. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break and go to tonight's main guest, Sarah Etlinger. So sit tight, and I will be right back in just a moment with Sarah. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. Like I said, tonight's guest is Sarah Etlinger. Sarah holds a BA in English from Skidmore College and an MA in English from Syracuse University, and a Ph.D. in Rhetoric and Composition from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Scholarly interests include new media studies, first-year composition, feminist literature, the Beatles, and popular culture. Currently, she's associate professor of composition and literature at Rock Valley College, where she teaches courses in composition, film, and literature. A Pushcart and Best of the Net nominee, she is author of 3 books: Never One for Promises from Kelsay, Little Human Things from Clare Songbirds, and most recently, The Weather Gods, which just came out from Barclay Press. And here she is, Sarah Etlinger. Hey, Sarah, how you doing tonight?
Hey, it's great to be back.
Yeah, great to have you on. So you had 2 just wonderful Poets Respond poems last year, and you joined us. You got to join us like we just had Shannan and Claire for the early sections. Now we get to have you for a whole hour, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
I know, it's hashtag goals, as the kids say.
Well, exactly. So first, why don't you tell us a little bit about this new book? How do the themes come together in it?
Well, so I wrote it pre-pandemic, right? Because I don't write, except for the book I just finished. I didn't set out to write this book, right? Mm-hmm. I write poems and they come together. So I think once I had a bunch of them, my mentor and coach was like, I think there's a lot of weather stuff in here. Uh-huh. But I was also processing some grief. So we were looking at those kind of interactions, and then literally the pandemic happened and everybody was home. And I thought, boy, that's a timely one. But I sent it out. I think I'd sent it out a month or 2 before the pandemic started. I can't in 2020 because I wrote everything probably 2018, 2019. Mm-hmm. And then, the pandemic happened. And so it was accepted, but not published till now. And that's okay. I mean, that's what happens. But I was really looking at this sort of idea of like, how do we process ideas of grief? How do we, what role does, the world around us play? Also, I'm like obsessed with Marianne Baruch as a poet, and she had this amazing poem in her second to, not the collection she just did, but the one before it, the Anti-Grief, where it's like all of us singing, and it was just this glory. And I wrote into that, where she kind of, I forget the what she does, but she has these little like remnants, like a piece of lettuce on the leftover lunch and the dent in the pillow and like the rain. And I was like, oh, but it's really about the things you can and can't control. Okay, cool. So that poem ended up being The Weather Gods. And then I kind of wrote around that.
Yeah, well, one of the things that stands out is just that the sort of the positivity of it through grief. You could almost classify most of the poems as love poems, and love is very directly in there, even as you're writing about other topics and issues going on, which is a refreshing thing to do for a poet. It's not something we see very often.
No, or they'll be so weird. Like, and I love a good weird, love, right? Like love poem as like Yard Flamingo. Like I love those things. But yeah, it really is, I think. I don't think anyone's quite characterized it quite like that, but I agree with that interpretation, because even when they're not about that, there is, I think, a capaciousness, right? That is becoming a thing that I'm interested in. Even though I don't explicitly write about joy. Like I don't say I'm going to write about joy.
Yeah. Well, let's hear a poem so we get the sense of what's going on. What do you want to read first?
I was going to go in order, but you know what? I'm going to read The Weather Gods. Because I think that's on page 75.
Okay, thanks.
If any of you have it. But that's the one that kind of is the anchor of the poem, even though it's almost in the last third. That's okay. It's called The Weather Gods. It should be enough, the bits of breakfast, the coffee cups tumbled into the sink, the watermark on the couch pillow, the wave from the window on the way to work. It all should be enough, a matter of routine, the things that come with it, the things we do when doing is being, and being seems all there is to do. It's kind of like the rain. We love it for our gardens or for evenings in deep July, to sit together and hear its roar on the roof and its drum on the earth in the duvet of dark. It can feel good, resolve, until you find you're at the mercy of other forces, the weather gods who summon rain while you're changing a tire at the side of the road in late November, cold and raw and sharp, or when it swells the rivers, breaks the dams, swells the earth.
Yeah, and that was The Weather Gods, the title poem from the new book by Sarah Etlinger. And yeah, that is a great central metaphor for the poem. And there's a lot of is your husband is a farmer? Is that right? Or is it? Or
no, he's I have a friend who's a farmer. My husband's a librarian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like farm imagery too. It feels very country, like rural-ish in its setting.
Well, it's funny. I grew up in the woods of New Hampshire.
Okay, that's.
But I live in Milwaukee. But I work like almost 90 miles away, at a 2-year school in Rockford, Illinois, and there's fields all the way, the whole way is farms and pastures, and so I see it twice a day, every day, and I've been doing that 10 years, and I'm not sick of it yet. So I think that, and because when I'm driving, you can't really do much but drive. I've got my voice to text, and I got my podcast, and I got all this stuff, but that's it. So I can do a lot of writing or in my head, and listening, thinking about it when I'm doing that. And I think that's a lot of the rural comes from just being around it, as it goes 90 miles out my window. But,
yeah, exactly.
But I love it. I mean, I'm captivated by even like all the seasons and even within the seasons. So like now they're rolling the bales of hay. So you can see them on the fields, and there's big like spools. Last week, they weren't doing that. So I don't know. I just like seeing the changes in that, even though every 10 years, I'm doing it 3 days a week for 10 years.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating just as a metaphor, because there's so many things that happen in life that you can't control. And the idea of gods, that was the original purpose for gods. And then we, combined all gods into one God, and that became the religion. But the idea of that there's these forces that are outside of you that you have to deal with that don't care about you or don't, that you have no influence in. And that,
or that they don't even know you exist.
exactly,
Right? Like,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
the deer don't really know you exist. They're going to do what they're going to do,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and I'm a planner. Like, I'm a classic type A. My mom and I, like, when we plan meals, we're like, okay, we're going to plan meals for the week. And you can't control any of that. And I mean, a lot of stuff. So it was really hard for me
Mm-hmm.
to come to this realization. But I think I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost there.
Yeah, very good. Well, let's hear another poem. Which one do you want to do next?
Okay. I'm going to do, it's similar, I think, to what we were talking about here. We do not yet know all the ways. So again, this idea of, it's a love poem, but it's also something about, I think, giving into this sort of, we don't yet know what's going to happen. We do not yet know all the ways our hearts can break. How could we know all the cracks and fault lines when the bends and curves of terrain have not been crossed? How could we know what we'll require when we are left pitched in leaking tents and shivering with nothing but wet leaves for beds? We cannot know these things without maps, without valleys and rivers carved into our skins from love's worn compass. We do not yet know how we will crave the sense of love spent tapering the night down to melted wax, or how your hands learn mine the way dew learns the curve of grass blades. We have not yet come to know just how, when morning sighs and the sun insists it's time for warmth, we are already waiting, like water on sleep's surface, with ink on our fingertips to draw the map, fill in the broken lines, show us where the path will fork.
Yeah, and that was one of the early poems in the book. We do not yet know all the ways, from The Weather Gods by Sarah Etlinger. You mentioned already that you're a big planner. And so how does that, I was wondering, I'm curious about that. How does that go into your writing process? Because, I mean, first, a book kind of takes a lot of planning, but also a book ends up being about things that we don't realize it's about in a weird way. Like as we're writing poems, it's sort of, there's this organic process where a book emerges. And it's like, oh, I didn't realize I was writing about that over and over again. So how does that play into you as a planner to be a poet too, where poetry is such an organic, sort of spontaneous thing?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I think the way that I can plan on most weeks is I try to give myself time to write every week, whether it's an hour. And if I'm not feeling it, I'm not feeling it, right? So I'm not the writer that even if it's Thursday at 10 o'clock, I can't write if I don't have something to write about. But I think, so the only thing I can do is give myself the time to write. But you're right, it doesn't, I mean, other than the routine and I have a child, so any given moment, right, like that may happen or not. It's hard. I think I have to trust the process. For whatever reason, I am a little bit less neurotic about, because I know that process. One, I've been, a writing teacher for almost 20 years, and I have been writing my whole life in fits and starts. And so I kind of know, okay, this is what happens. You're not going to always get it, or you might get it, and then you can go back. And so the thing for me is I can always change it. Somewhere there's, I can always change it if I want to, is the sort of trapdoor in there. But yeah, I mean, people are, just like you said tonight, like, this is really a book of love poems. I'm like, gosh, she's right. But I didn't think of it. This book is 5 years old, or 4. I mean, essentially, when we think about it. So I'm still learning about what it is. And I think that's one way we compartmentalize. Like, I can give this into the world and it will be interpreted. And I have to let it go.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that you get out of poetry, is the ability to let go? Because I'm a person, I'm kind of always in control. I always joke that, like, I hate flying because I want to be the pilot.
Yeah, me too. Like, I hate flying. Like, I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
I just don't like being at the...
Yeah, I just don't like somebody else, managing my future. I'd rather be steering the plane. And so poetry is a way that you're sort of not, at least your conscious mind is not steering the plane. which is always fascinating. Do you find that's maybe one of the things you get out of poetry is to be able to let go of that sense of like planning it out ahead of time, and it's a place where you're free to just let go.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I didn't think of it quite like that, but I follow I have some poet friends, and they're always talking about like, how do you go from one poet move to the other? I'm like, I don't know, I'm just writing this thing. But I think you do in that moment. I let go and the poem unfolds or it stops, and then I got to go back into it. But yeah, and I think also the downtime, like all that processing that you do by living your life. Who was it? Louise Glick said she didn't teach all year. This was in like the 70s, but she said she didn't teach all year because she needed like some time to live her life.
Mm-hmm.
And then she could be a teacher, and then she could write. Like she couldn't do both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because these things. And so I think that too, to let go of all the other stuff and just focus on like this poem or these 4 poems that I've got to revise or something.
Yeah. Well, let's hear another one from the book.
All right. I think I'm going to do Backyard in August, because somebody asked me, Jenna, if you're listening, this is because you asked me to read this one. So I'll read this one. Backyard in August. This heavy season full of everything glistening, golden black-eyed Susans drowned in light, tussled in a clump of weeds, ivy twisting its shoulders along lattice fences propped against houses and porches. From where I sit on the patio, the prim, solemn rows of identical chimneys, crowning roofs along the block, one after the other, strung along the power lines of wires, spines arching and flexing to support our precarious lives. Against the brocade of trees, leaves still richly green, quivering bas-relief for the splotches of birds and birdsong in the stew of swirling clouds. In the vast blue, later hung with a star drift and deep darkening pierced only by fireflies. All of it on display, summer and technicolor poured in to every crack and space, everywhere, everything, breathing and moving and deepening. All of it together. Nothing seems lonely.
And that was Backyard in August, another poem from the Weather Gods. We were talking a little bit just in the break about that first topic, the AI, and you mentioned being a composition and writing teacher, and so I'm just kind of curious what your experience is and what your thoughts are about AI as it enters the classroom. I've thought about it for a while. I tweeted a long time ago about how eventually, like the plagiarism that we're worried about, people are going to be caught not plagiarizing but just using AI to write poems and pretending them their own, and we're going to be worried about that, and that's going to be the accusation. You didn't really write that poem. You just had a computer write it for you, And so I think that's definitely going to happen in poetry, but it's a much more serious thing when it happens in college, when you're trying to, actually compete and prove that you earned the degree you're about to get. So how do you think that's going to go as a writing professor yourself?
I mean, the short version is, and I've been thinking a lot about it too, and plagiarism in general. And, about 20 years ago when I started teaching, the professor I had said, look, plagiarism is always going to exist in some form, whether now it's AI. We didn't see that 20 years ago, but students buying essays, whatever. And if you spend all your time thinking about that, you will just do that. It'll be like whack-a-mole, right? Instead, think about, what are you doing? What do you want to encourage in the classroom? So if you have rote assignments, that everybody has to write a 5-paragraph essay or a 12-paragraph essay on the same 3 texts, that's going to invite a lot, right, of plagiarism. But if you are more innovative, or you're getting students to think and you're doing things, you'll have less of it. And that's kind of been my approach. And so I think it's a moment, I can't predict the future. And I've already seen professors at my school and other schools going, I've gotten a few answers. And what they're doing is they're having to retrofit or retool their things. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, necessarily. I think it forces us to what do we do? What do we do well? What's our value in the university, in the world? And how can we use it as a tool to best prepare those things, our students, for those things, but also how can we kind of think about what the goal of education is, or higher education? I mean, there are so many, especially after COVID, right? When we're so many at breaking points. So I don't necessarily see it as like kiss of death, but I don't teach fiction or poetry as like creative fiction or poetry. So I have perhaps a different take on it. A lot of students already, are using essay writing. They have people who do it. They buy them. There's all these essay farms out there. So I don't know on any given day, right? If my student is writing it, I mean, it looks like them. Like I can look across at 4 essays and go, yeah, that's the thing. But that could be the same person writing all 5. Like so it's not that I don't think about it, and it's not that I don't care about it, and I don't think we should do nothing about it. I think that if I was concerned about that, that's all I would do. Is worry like, is this a plagiarized essay? Yeah. Like I'd have to run every single essay through like 4 different checkers, and I couldn't actually grade it. So I mean, that's my take on it, and so I can already feel the hate there coming in,
Yeah, well, to me, I feel like we're gonna have to have a kind of revolution in personal responsibility. Yeah. Like if you want to fake stuff, you're gonna be able to fake anything you want. Especially as we like live more and more online, you can fake anything on Instagram. I get the perfect life.
Well, look at that Compass guy.
Yeah,
right. The guy in New York. Like he literally, I mean, this is not. I don't know if he used ChatGPT, but he faked like several identities, maybe several businesses. Like, I mean, you can already do it, and if he's doing it, other people are, right? Just out of the world. Yeah. So I mean, personal responsibilities.
What it damages, like ultimately, is your own soul. Like if you don't want to grow as a human being in these like 80 years, if you're lucky, we have here. Yeah. Then you can have AI write all your poems and trick, the editor of some literary magazine to publish them.
Yeah,
but then what's
like,
the point?
To do it for a poem, like to do it for a poem is interesting, right? Because there's no money in poetry. Yeah. There's no money in, and like to do it for a seat in Congress. Not that I would, but like I could sort of go, okay, I can wrap my head around. Like you want the power and the money and the fame of being a seat in Congress, but like who wants to be? I mean, we'd all love to be famous poets, but it's not like when you become a favorite poet, you get $1 million or something, right? So like it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and the pride in it comes from like this came out of my imagination. This was my personal creativity that somebody else is enjoying. So if somebody else isn't enjoying it, then what's the point? I mean, if it's coming from somewhere else, then why should I even be proud of it? I don't know. I think we're gonna have to just look internally eventually and say, we do certain things to make ourselves better human beings and grow as we move through life. And one of the things is to write essays in college or to write poems. And if we're going to fake it, then we're not going to grow and we're going to be the ones who suffer. I think there might be a way that we grow spiritually just because of the ease with which we could sort of ditch all that opportunity for growth.
And who was it he's like a famous poet. It's like Auden or somebody who said poetry like doesn't do anything matter, but men die from lack of it or want of it or something like that. There's that famous, I always get it wrong.
It's William Carlos Williams, yeah.
I think it was Williams. Yeah. I knew it was some of those modernists. But honestly, like it doesn't do anything in the world that has necessarily a tangible, marketable thing. But if you don't grow as a human, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And I mean, if we know, I mean, as I said, I love the ancient Greeks and rhetoric. The word poem comes from the Greek word to make, right? Like, and that's just so incredible that you make something. Like I made anything.
Yeah.
Out of anything, out of nothing. Like out of nothing.
Yeah. So is that why you write? I kind of like it's a sort of a baited question. I think you're going to say that you write for that reason, but is that why you write? And why? When did you discover that was something worth pursuing? That's something I'm always interested in. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I've always done it. I asked my mom, and she said I was always a reader. I read early. I spoke early. I was writing. My handwriting was terrible, but I would write stories and think of stuff. So I was always into that. When they asked me to write something, in like 3rd grade or 4th, they'd do a report. Most kids would have like 3 paragraphs, and I'd be like, I got 4 pages, because I liked just sitting, even about like Mexico or tigers or, and I was going to be a writer. I decided I think 8th grade.
Uh-huh.
Before that, I was going to be an attorney because I'm Jewish and that's what happens. You have 2 choices. My sister already committed to the doctor. So I was like, well, that, and my dad was the accountant. So your choice is, but honestly, I would always, and then, I did commit. I think I was like, all right, I'm going to go to college for English. I'm going to do this. And then I got to my beloved college, and I'd always been in love with literature. And I took my first creative writing class. And again, I'm 19, and I'm serious in my head. But I didn't think you revise poems, right? Or stories in the way that, so I gave it up. I was like, well, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. This is my poem. I don't want to revise this. And it was a long time that I wrote anything. After that, because I fell in love with literature and rhetoric and composition, and I love teaching. So I said, you know what, I'm good. I love this job, this career. And even with, I was at UW-Milwaukee has a creative writing Ph.D. They were in my office all the time. And I was like, let me hear what you were. And I was like, I like it. I don't. This one, but I never was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And then the shortest version is after my son was a year old, I was going to write a novel. I was like, all right, I think I can write this novel now. And it was plotted in my head from all that driving,
Uh-huh.
And I was, we were driving home from seeing my parents, and it was like summer in Indiana. I don't know if you've ever been to Indiana, but it's like cornfields.
Yeah, I've driven through.
Like,
yeah.
It's like a sea of green, and it kind of looks like this, but with green and farmhouses. And it was literally, Tim, I was driving, and I had words in my head, and I chanted them 3 hours home, and sat down and wrote the poem.
Oh, wow.
And it became, I thought, I don't know what I did. Did I just do this? And I showed it to my friends, and they were like, actually, that doesn't suck. You need to fix it. That doesn't suck. And I was like, is it? And then through the drive, I started to do more, and then I haven't stopped. And that was probably, I want to say 2016.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of my whole life, but it was like shut down for over a decade. So here I am.
Yeah. Do you still have that poem, the one that you wrote?
I do.
Yeah. Do you want to read it?
I find it. It's not in any of my books.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I should read it.
Yeah, can you find it?
Let me find it.
Is it online anywhere?
It's gotten I think I have it.
Yeah.
Holy moly, the internet in the Wayback Machine. Maybe I don't have it. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it.
Okay. Well, if you do, drop the link in the chat window, and I'll share it on screen too.
Yeah. It was this old defunct journal. Oh, I hope there's an archive. Oh no, I have a print copy of it somewhere, but it's not in any of my books.
Mm-hmm.
I will find it for you, Tim. But it was basically, maybe I have it on my computer. But the internet Wayback Machine, I need it.
So what was it about? Can you describe
Well,
it?
I do have it.
Ah, nice. Okay.
I do. Oh my God. Well, so it was kind of about this moment where I had this moment while I was driving, and you can on I-90, and you can see for literal miles and
Yeah,
miles
I've been on that road. Yeah, I drove out to California on that road.
flat,
Yeah. Yeah.
green, and you might get like a red barn and a white house, and then like the highway goes through, and then there's like another field, and they're owned by the same guy, and I was like, what is weird? Capitalism is weird. Like, that's kind of the thought that I had. Like, it's so beautiful and bucolic and Americana, and then there's like this road going through, and I was like, this is so weird. And I think I wanted to pick up. I don't know, pick up on that. So this is me as a baby poet. I'll read it. It's called Crossroads. Elkhart, Indiana, July. Hot with a thick, thick heat. Skies hold the heat you can taste. Beyond the hood of my car, the road stretches west all the way to Crimson, California, and east to New York. Beneath the gray road, a creek jammed to bursting from the water of hot summer rains. Fields far beyond my eyes' reach show off their bare midriffs as they tan in the sun, green and rust with corn and soybeans and past the fields houses sit so delicately, white and weathered like the earth for carpet. Inside them, I imagine, for I cannot see anything but for an instant, as my car thrubs the pavement. Boys wash dirt off their fingers, from the cracks in their skin flows water so gray it stains the sink. Girls clean up the shadows of a trickle to eat what mom made from the land that burnt the plants. After dinner, they poke at a fish or a bird outside near the creek, or catch fireflies as the horses doze. Teenage girls, hair pulled back or cropped hugging necks and cut off shorts, prop naked feet against the porch. I see them all, stuck in sort of trapped dream, where tomorrow is more plowing, more eating, more fireflies, more picking, more. From the road, none of this matters. Each house only a blink. From the house, each car a blur, a rush, gray with speed. Heat, and then more heat. Rain, and more heat. Good God, it's gray. Gray like Syracuse, the road below. Good God, good God, good God, like the prayer before eating. Each mile a revelation. Each car an incantation, an amen to America.
Oh, that's great. That was so cool to hear. And
Thank you.
so what to you? What was it about that poem that excited you? Because I had a similar experience where I kind of wrote for fun, and and then all of a sudden I wrote one where I was surprised by what I was saying, and that experience was like, whoa, like what was that? And that's what made me fall in love with poetry.
Yeah, I think the first part was that I had words at all.
Yeah,
like I was, you're sort of looking at it and you're sort of thinking. I don't know if you drive a lot, but like I drive. So my mom, my 1-year-old and my husband and my dog were sleeping. So I was like quiet. I was like, oh my God, I have like a thought, and I was just thinking about it. And then, so I was first surprised that there were words in a thing like that I could use. But I think I'm surprised I said that. But what I think excited me was that I was like, oh, I could put this here. I could bring something back. Like I could do the and the more I can play with sound and melody and use an interesting metaphor or whatever, and I was like, oh, that was way fun. Like I want to keep doing that now. But I have no training, so I kept like doing this going, I don't know any training, and they're like, you have 3 degrees in literature. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the same. Like we didn't mix with the creative, not because they didn't invite us to parties, but it was just that was their thing, and like I wouldn't pretend to know like anything about chemistry. Like I wouldn't be like, hey, I'm coming in, right? Like why would I? So I'm not gonna be like, oh yeah, I can write a poem, So yeah, it was all surprising, all of it.
Well, that's great. It's really great to hear that story, and I think a lot of people probably relate to that. There is a sense that like you need some sort of training to be a poet, as if we don't, speak poetry spontaneously out of our mouth holes all the time. It's like,
and I tell my students that, like, right? Like, you don't need to be you don't need to be a writer to be a writer, right? You don't need to. And I was like, oh no, and they were. Then finally, a couple of my friends were like, do you hear yourself right now? Like, you had this moment of like, you said to me. Say to your students that you're a writer if you're writing. So you're a writer, go, write, or not. I mean, that you need some cred. But, I'm in academia, and I love academia, warts and all. But there is that sort of sense that I think that's where the thing is coming from, that like, oh, I don't have any degrees. I've taken exactly 2 creative writing classes, right, in my whole life. And one of them went very poorly.
Well, tell me about that. Why did one go poorly? Because I
don't want to name any names.
Oh, yeah, without naming names. This was that first one. But so I will say, I was young. I didn't know anything about, because I'd never really taken a real writing class, right? Other than like at the Y for 2 weeks or something, But like, so I didn't know that like you had to freaking revise this stuff, or that there were exercises or forms, or I mean, I knew like rhyme scheme and stuff. So it was this very lovely poet, but it was his last semester before retirement. And he'd been
a poetry professor for 1,000 years, and he was delightful, but he was not hearing any of your 19-year-old girl, adolescent, anything.
Uh-huh.
And he was very old school, like, and he gave us Randall Jarrell and Auden and the old, an assignment, and I was just like, I can't do this every week. Like, I don't have anything to say back to Randall Jarrell, right? Or Auden then, or I mean, we had a few women poets, but like not really, and you had a weird assignment. So he would say things like, okay, write a poem that's 10 lines and 5 of these lines have to have 8 things. And I was like, what am I doing? Like and now I think I'd be great at it. Like now I'd be like, oh, this is awesome. But I didn't know anything, so it didn't go very well. But he made us take it pass fail. So I passed, I was fine. And I think I learned a few things in it, of course, but I was like, I can't, that is not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I am not. And they had phased out the creative writing major anyway. So like, I was like, good, I don't have to sit through this again. I'm going to go read my Jane Austen, and write about that. Like I can write about Yeats, I can write about Eliot, and that's all I want to do. And
So only taking the two classes in poetry.
one was in poetry, one was in fiction.
Oh, really? Okay.
So then and then in college I took a fiction class as a one-off. I was studying abroad in Paris, and I needed a class to fill my schedule. I'm like, I'll take a fiction class with an expat nobody's heard of. This is going to be great, and it was great. I loved it. But I had some desire to continue, and I learned like how to make a story. And then I was like, no, I'm going to be an English professor. I got to apply to grad school. So that was just not on my radar. Mm-hmm. But yeah, anyway.
So where would you say, because I know a lot of people don't, a lot of people I know, even I think, I'm thinking right now of Nancy Miller Gomez, who's one of the best poets I know. But there seems to be a thing where like you need to take classes to get credibility. And if you don't have credibility or something, then you don't know. So where do you learn outside of classes how to write poems? Like how did you approach? Yeah, do you read craft books or do you read?
I read, and I mean in literature, like I encountered all kinds. Like I had survey classes. I've taught them, right? So I know, like I have. It's sort of like, I mean, it's in there. You get what a poem is and how. By studying it, by teaching it, by reading a lot. So like I knew a lot more than I gave myself credit for, right? Like, so, I learned how to scan, and I learned how to hear the music of a line. And so I think that was all in there. I just didn't know it. But then when I got serious, so I don't know if you know the poet, Derek Harrell. He's at Ole Miss, and we went to school, UWM, we graduated the same year, and he's brilliant and lovely. And he was one of the ones I showed that. And he was like, this doesn't sound, fix it. Oh my God. But also like, no, you're the real deal. Keep at it. Read. Just read. You get a packet of poems and send them out and read them. And read. So I did. And so largely, Derek, if you're listening, you were the one who said you should take this seriously. But if you're going to do that, then you got to read anything you can get your hands on. Stuff you like, stuff you don't like. Go read journals. So I do. I mean, I just finished Carmen Jimenez Smith's Be Recorder from 2019. I listen to podcasts now. So I am just reading a lot and going, oh, that's interesting. Oh, this is cool. Or nope, don't like that. But isn't this a cool way to enjam that? I'm always just keeping them catalog. Plus I work with a woman and I have other people read my stuff, right? So like they'll say no, or they'll be like, you're doing that thing again, don't do that. So I mean, to really how to write, I'm not sure I know how to write a poem. I think it helps. It's that thing you were talking about before where you just sort of sit down and you're like, I'm gonna see where this goes. Or sometimes I'll get the end. Like right now I'm working on one and I had a couple of lines and I thought they were the beginning, but now I'm like, no, they're the end. I gotta, I learned tricks. Like I learned tricks to revise, to exercises, and sometimes I'll give myself an exercise, say, all right, cut 10 words out of this poem and see what happens. Or, write as a whatever, if I, and some of them work and some of them are dumpster fires, right? Like
Yeah.
they're
Well,
just there.
that reminds me, that kind of sense of iteration and repeating and trying and seeing what the heck sticks if you throw it against the wall. It reminds me, I was listening to some podcasts and they were describing how the Beatles worked toward the end when they were so creative. And it was just that they'd each sort of have to come in with one like riff or something, or one like line or melody or whatever. And then they just work together, mashing these four things together until they got a song out of it. And then they decided if they liked it or not. But they'd like half force themselves to make songs out of nothing.
Did you watch Get Back?
That might have been it. I don't know I can't remember where that came from.
Well, watch
but,
it.
Yeah.
Even if you don't love the Beatles, I'm obsessed. But even if you like them, watch it, because that's exactly what happens.
Uh-huh.
Like they come in and they will be like, or one will say, what about that line you had last week about this? It'll go here. Or what if we went, and it was like, for someone who, I was like just sitting there like this for 3 hours. Like,
Yeah, that's cool.
it was so cool because it is craft. I always said, now I started teaching in the mid 2005 is when I started teaching. So that was when like you could still kind of watch MTV
Mm-hmm.
and VH1, right? When they when they had real music on there. And I would say a revision is like a behind the music. Like what went into the making of this? Like think about all the little things that you went into, to do it. And they were like, oh. But I can't use that metaphor anymore because nobody knows what that is.
That's funny. Yeah.
I tried it a couple of years ago and they were like, a what? A VH1? And they were like, what is that? I don't have cable. And I'm like, oh my God, I still have cable. Okay.
That's funny. Well, we got to do more poems. It's just so fun talking, but let's do another poem.
Okay.
Yeah. We got to keep.
All right. I want to do. Oh, well, that's right. I don't know how many we are. Yeah. All right. I'm going to do one that I think it's my favorite one in the collection.
Okay.
And I don't remember where this came from, but it's still my favorite one. It's called Something Like Light. It's on page 82 if you're following. Okay. Your hands move through prayer like water in summer trees, sparkling tessellations winking in the sky. Today is the day I attend Mass and say Amen without a heart. The only church I've ever been to is the one with the broken birds and souls with light as blue and calm as day, lost love at first sight. There is nothing holy about a body beyond itself, a body shorn clean of voice and of light, as if by a lion's tongue. You take my picture as I move into the shadows, so you can bury it with the bones of your memory, the dirt full of holes to hide all the things we hope our eyes reveal. In springtime, the first thing I do is scour the ground for crocus fingers, climbing sore and weary out of the earth. You ask me at the cusp of breathing, where will we go? Where will we go when the light hides away and the light is as red as strawberries and the slice of the summer sun quivering under the knife's cut, a final rendering?
Yeah.
Oh, I think this one is it was not the same, but Stevens, the snowman, and then of course Taryn Hayes has Lion for Wallace, or Snow for Wallace Stevens, and he's something about lions and light, and it's gorgeous. And I went, if you never wrote another poem ever again, and you wrote that, you would be great.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned
Terrence Hayes.
Yeah. You mentioned this is one of your favorite poems in the book. What is it? I'm always curious about what makes a poem someone's favorite poem. As the poet, it seems like it's very different. Like I was thinking about, when my first book came out, people would mention the poems they liked the most, and they were not the poems that I liked the most. There's such a disconnect. People still do it. They're like,
like The Backyard in August, I like it, but I'm like, really? What about this one?
Uh-huh.
This one's weirder. I think I like it because, well, I think I just like it. But I think I like it because I was at the time trying to like have these sort of starker lines that are not, I'm a wordy poet and I'm never not going to be, but I sometimes can get a really nice, clean line where I'm doing something with metaphor, but I'm not opening up the metaphor so that, okay, the whole poem goes there, but I'm opening it enough so you can twist and then I shift, but it all kind of comes together. Is a way that I think about it, where you sort of just get like dreams, you sort of just get this blip of something and then something else happens and the next thing you know, you're, making cotton candy at the zoo or something. with your now wife. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, yeah. And I don't think that poem is particularly dreamlike, but I also think, it was a moment, and I think the craft for me, and other people have liked it too. So that's not one that's totally like, oh, okay, I love this one and nobody else does. But it's not everyone's favorite, I guess. I don't know.
Well, that's interesting. Well, let's hear. I do want to keep the poems rolling. Let's hear another one, and then I want to talk about revising, because you've talked about revising a lot. So let's read another one.
All right. So the last poem in the book is called, I think it's the last poem. Yeah, it's the last poem in my own. I ought to know my own book, but shouldn't I? It's called Walking Without You for the First Time. And this picks up on the grief that we've been kind of talking about. My shadow props me up in all this light that used to taste like butter in our mouths, or that often hid behind us in a game of chase. Once we ran after a dog we thought was lost, traipsing through soggy grass for nearly half a mile, yelling and calling in the wind, only to find the owner hidden just around the corner, letting the dog run. We laughed, kept going. We always kept going, as if the world were a machine, powered by the crooked leans of our bodies and the stamp of our feet along the path. Drowned blue hem of sky racing along with us, bees and birds thrilling to open air, wind like a huge white sail with open arms and full. It's all still whirring along. The ocean's still at it, folding and unfolding. Dogs still bark, catch frisbees in their mouths. In the early parts of dusk, tucked in the golden glow of their evening houses, people still eat dinner, scrape plates into sinks. The wind still shudders through trees. Leaves flirt this way and that, until it's time to loosen and fall, doing so gracefully.
And that was Walking Without You for the First Time, from The Weather Gods by Sarah Etlinger, the book that we're focusing on today. And you mentioned revision a lot, how the idea of revising sort of turned you off of poetry for a while, for 10 years or more. At first,
at least.
And that's and that's one of the things that I do a critique show every Friday.
I watched it a couple weeks ago. It was great.
Well, thanks for saying that. But the problem for me with it is I actually don't revise, so I don't know what to really do. I've never really revised.
You're one of those.
I am one of those annoying poets, and so I I'll fix a typo. I'll get like comma doesn't feel right, and I'll make it a dash. Then I'll be like, oh, the comma was right, and I'll put it back, or a word will be wrong. And I'll try to find a better word.
Well, you're in good company. Because I think Marie Howe says that, and Linda Gregg said, I get them all at once. And she says she said in an interview once, she said the most drastic thing I ever did was I will read it and go, oh, okay, the poem really starts here, 4 lines in, and that's it. And I was like, what kind of witchcraft?
Exactly. Well, that's how it feels to me. It's sometimes it'll work, but I guess the problem for me is that I feel like once I leave a poem, I can't enter it again. You can't step in the same river twice. I'm a different human being, and so it doesn't work or something. I don't know. It just feels.
I love that though. I will walk back my for that, because you, and even if you do, you're not the same person, right? You're not. You have a clearer, sense of it. But you can't recharm. It doesn't recharm you.
Yes. Yeah, so how do you approach revision with that in mind?
I am not that. So I got to work with what I got. Right. My mother and I are nothing if not resourceful people. But sometimes I will get one start to finish, and I go, okay, yeah, let's move the comma. Oh my God, I spelled that wrong, and then it's good. So I know what that feels like. It's great. I revise in a lot of different ways. Again, I have readers and I'll go, is this anything? And sometimes I'll know certain readers that they're going to go, oh, he's going to point to that. Or I'll say, the other day I sent something to a friend and I said, I know there's something wrong with this poem, but I don't know what it is. So tell me. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not, or sometimes I'll say, the ending sucks. How do I connect the dots? So I'll do that, or I'll give it to other people. Sometimes I sit on it, or I'll write it again. I'm not always witchcrafty. So it really depends on the day, on the poem, how much time I have. Does somebody want it? you've got to finish the revisions on this book because tomorrow we're sending them, stuff like that. And I'm like, I won't fix it. Some changes I refuse to make because I like them. But I am a pretty heavy reviser because I sometimes I have to be. I think it's just however you keep coming back to it. I agree that I'm never recharmed, but sometimes I am pulled back to it. Like, what if I thought about that metaphor again?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that really the metaphor? Like you'll think about, well, you don't, but other people will think about these things like, does this work? Like I said before, I think it's this poem the last lines have to be the end, and then it's a nice last line poem. So I don't know. I have a friend who says they just have to. I didn't want to cut anything, or I would cut things, and I would be, but I just try to make them work, and they're like, no, they're like foster children. Just go live in a different house. Like it's okay. They're not bad children. They're not bad lines. They just don't work in this family. Let's go find them another family. And so I don't throw anything out. Well, I do the really bad ones that I know are like, all right, I might do something like you do and go, all right, I did that sucked. Like, and I'll just leave it. But I don't throw like drafts out.
Are there any poems in the book that you remember, how the revision went? Is there something that you could like share and talk about how different it might have been originally that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say heavy revised. It varies. Trying to think. Some of them just got new titles. So that was, that's not a heavy revision. Some of them had a couple of the editor recommended edits. And so I was like, yes, no, this one, things like that. So there were some, trying to think of like any that I did like 18 drafts or something. And now I'm looking at like 3 poems in a row that I remember writing in one sitting. So I just said, I don't do that. And then literally like 3
It
poems.
comes in all kinds of ways, I guess.
Yeah. It's hard because there's another one. It's hard because I wrote this so long ago.
Yeah.
That I can't. Oh, I think, yes, I have one. And I was actually going to read it. So maybe I'll read it. Can I read it? Do we have time for me?
That'd be perfect. Yeah, there's time for another poem or two, even maybe.
Okay, I'll read it, and then I'll talk about it. It's where'd it go? I just passed it. It's called Ex Nihilo.
I had 29.
29. Thank you. Yeah, I passed it. It's called Ex Nihilo. Okay. We say nothing comes from nothing. Only God creates something out of nothing. Metaphor. What we'll say when we want something to be what it isn't, to stretch to meet our expectations. A field of corn to say, I love you. A knock-kneed stance to say, I need saving. For God to say, I'd like to keep on living. The silent, quiet O in our throats as we call out to each other. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What we've called corn, we rip from stalks, smell the sweet earth at bronze necks. We'll say we've reaped what we've sown, all those sun hours hunched earthward. And we'll say we believe in God, in a whole world beyond. Isn't that why we're here, the whole mess of vegetables waiting in the cellar? Nothing until something, and then another thing entirely.
Yeah, great ending on that one. Yeah, that was Ex Nihilo. And so how is that different? Yeah.
Well, it was like there was a lot more in it. And like on the page, I've got either couplets or single lines. That wasn't there. I think I had it started with the what we've called corn. I mean, it was really, I was trying to go in a totally different direction, kind of thinking about, I think actually some of the language got put into a couple of the other poems in here as they floated around. It was really about harvesting and something else. And then I said, no, I think I want to, with some revisions. I mean, there was really, it was about like semantics, and it was like a lot longer. So it was like 3 poems, and that, because I was like trying to do something. And, all that. And then when I just finally pared it down, I was like, all right, what is like the thing that is really this poem? Okay, I can use this line. Then I kind of moved them around a lot. And then it took a change. And then it was like the Marine. And then I was like, oh, couples and single, done. And then it was done. And then I didn't look at it ever again, like until it came in here. So then, it took like weeks. And then I was like, nobody touch it. Don't blink at it. Right? Because you're like, if I look at it one more time, I'm going to change it, and it works. Another one, it's actually in the book that I just finished that's going to be out next year. Another poem like that I was writing about. So I have a friend who's a farmer, and he had texted me. He says, I got these watermelons, and they're called heirloom. He likes to grow heirloom stuff, and they're called Moon and Stars. And I was like, well, that's a book of poetry right there. And I was trying to work these stupid watermelons into like 8 poems, and I had so many revisions. And finally somebody said, will you just go look up how to grow watermelons? Like, just Google it. So I was like, okay, googly. And it was literally like 4 lines in of whatever website. They like this, they like that. And I was like, oh, I can do this in Pro. And it was kind of like I wrote sentences like how to grow watermelons. One, like that. And the poem came, and then I sort of shaped it, and I said, I think it's done. And they said, you have been working on this for 3 months. And I was like, pros and Google, like how to grow water. And it's not called how to grow watermelons, but like, it's literally like, oh, okay, I did it. Like, if I just broke what I was doing, like, I'm not writing a poem, I'm researching watermelons. Then I wrote a poem. Yeah.
And that's another point. So many poems for me, I will, have an idea or an image or something, and I'll look up how mining is done, or how,
right.
And then that becomes like the fuel for the poem. And so to go back to that AI discussion, is Wikipedia a kind of tool that you're using that's stealing, it's not something that I already knew that I'm writing about, but it's something where I learn about in the process of writing a poem. And then
and also I'll see as you read, you read literally hundreds of thousands of poems, but like you read them and you think, oh, that's a lovely turn of phrase. Even if the poem doesn't work, you kind of, might create its own version into your own work, right? Like, is that, and nobody would say, if they're different enough, nobody would be like, well, she plagiarized that from, right? Because that's, so I don't know, could I? Yeah, it wasn't even Wikipedia. It was like I don't even remember. I should save the site, but it was like watermelons, like, and it was very like, to plant a watermelon, make sure you have these. It was so prosaic. And I was like, yeah, this is interesting. I am researching how to grow watermelons in your backyard. Like, as if that's normal. I also will text my friends sometimes. They're like, sometimes you text me the weirdest stuff. Like, I'll be like, what is the word for this? Or, so that thing on the silo? Like, I'll ask these questions. Like, I saw this. And they'll be like, it's called this. I'm like, thank you. That's all I need. Cool. You're researching mining, for God's sake. Yeah, like, why would you ever do that? But
yeah, it's just funny the way, the way everything works.
I saw a poet, I don't know if you know Erica Meitner, but she posted, like, on her Insta feed something about, today I researched, like, I guess there's this line about when you plant corn, like, there's and where the road has to go. She's like, there's a word for this thing. I was like, I don't know what that is. So she's like, this is what I did today. So yeah, you find yourself down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, and the etymologies too. Even in verse itself is verse means that turn you make, a farmer makes, turning around to do, planting different rows. That's the verse. So I love that diving into the etymology of things to give you ideas.
Oh, I have an etymological dictionary.
Oh yeah, I use the one online, but yeah.
And this is like, I could just read it because it's so interesting. Like, if you just look up something, it's so interesting. Or like, I had, the poetic terms where they come from. Yeah, verse comes from that, and so it's it's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, we're about out of time. Do you want to read one last poem to close out the show?
I will read one last one, and I will read the one that I sent you, the newest one from Minion. Let me find it if I have a sec.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. It's from Minion. I have it up here. Poem with husband and turtle. So whenever you're ready, we'll go for it.
All right. And okay, here it is. Poem with husband and turtle. Okay. My husband told me he helped a turtle cross the road this morning. I asked, are you supposed to do that? Because the world is often in need of explanation. Sometimes we need permission for kindness. Tikkun olam is a funny thing. Sometimes repairing the world is a need so ocean-like we can't get around it. Sometimes it feels monstrous and holy, and other times I don't even know who or what it is, or how it holds itself along my body. Sometimes it is invisible, often small and insignificant, like the scent of a fresh peach. Other times it is unwieldy and unyielding, unexplainable, but pulsing with the blood of its own existence, just entirely wholly there. Shouldn't we let things that are wholly what they are be what they are? He replies, it could have been killed by a car, so I carried it across in the direction it was going and waited for it. What happened then? I asked. It waited for me to get out of the way and then kept going.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love that ending too. Poem with Husband and Turtle. And that's from minionmag.com. So if anyone wants to look that up, there's 3 more poems by Sarah there as well. Yeah, that reminds me of the time we had a tarantula crossing the road. And up here, and
those big furry spiders?
Big furry ones, yeah. And I thought they were, we're up in the mountains, but the desert's right down there, and it was sort of heading toward the desert. And so me and the kids didn't know what to do. We were trying to stop the cars, don't run over the thing, and we tried to encourage it, but then I got scared and froze. And so eventually, I didn't have the courage to pick it up. So eventually we just
my husband said he saw the same thing.
Yeah.
He was like, I gotta pick this thing up, and I was like,
yeah, a turtle I would have, maybe not a snapping turtle, but a turtle, but not I don't know, I'm not one of the spider handlers, no. But we helped it not die, so there's that. Anyway.
So Tikkun olam, you repaired the world, you saved a tarantula.
Yeah.
You saved a spider.
Yeah, definitely, excellent.
So did those come by often?
It's the only time we've seen one up here.
Okay, because if I go to California, I'm not gonna see clouds of tarantulas.
No,
okay,
I've been here 12 years. We've seen 3 rattlesnakes and 1 tarantula, 1 scorpion. Those are the 3. They're the 5.
All right, I can handle that.
Okay, it's not that bad. Not that bad. But anyway, before you go, tell us about the new book, because you mentioned you have a manuscript finished. What's up next, and is there any kind of sense of when it might come out?
So I actually just recently found out. My manuscript, it's a retelling of Persephone and Demeter, and it's got some the poems you accepted from Rattler in there. Some other things is going to be out through a university press in Wisconsin, UW-Stevens Point. It's called Cornerstone, and it'll be out in April 2024.
Oh, excellent.
So I'm really excited. And next, I'm just, keeping at it. I'm writing stuff. I have a little inkling of a project, but I'm not ready to, I don't know if it's going to be that yet. So, but I'm still at it. I'm still, I said I would never write. Every time I finish anything, I'm like, I'm never writing another book ever again. And my friends go, in 2 weeks, I'm saving the text, and they send them to me. They'll say, you said this 2 weeks ago. And I go, okay, so I wrote this. Is this good? And they're like, oh my God. And the other one, another friend will say, you say this every single time. You say, I'm never writing another book ever again. And literally 24 hours later, so I wrote 4 poems today. And I go, well, I don't have a project. And they're like, tomorrow or 3 weeks. And I go, okay, now I have a project. So who knows, Tim? I might, if you have me back next year, I'll promote that one. And you might say, so I got 2 more projects. Or I might say, that's it.
Well, we're glad you're still writing. Thanks so much, Sarah, for being a guest today. It's been great talking to you and sharing
This has been so much fun.
Yeah, it's always so much fun. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too.
Yep. That was Sarah Etlinger with The Weather Gods, her newest book from Barclay, and another book or another poem from what's forthcoming. And we're gonna move on to our open lines. So don't go anywhere. The open lines is coming up. I forgot to say. I always want to say at the top of the show that we have open lines, and I keep forgetting to do it then. But I'm gonna do that from now on. I promise. But we have open lines. You can share any poems you would like. I'm going to share the Zoom link in just a second. Let me put this up on the screen so you can see how it works if you're new to all of this. Here's the open mic details. Email your poem first to open mic. That's openmic@rattle.com. That way we can show the poem on screen as you read it for everybody watching at home on YouTube and all of that, just like you were seeing with Sarah and the other guests already today. Email it to openmic@rattle.com first, because it takes a while sometimes to get through the interwebs. All those tubes get interwoven, and it's difficult sometimes. But first do that. Then I'm going to share the link to the Zoom we've been on on the chat windows on both Facebook and YouTube. So join me there only if you'd like to share a poem. If you just want to listen, sit tight where you are, and you can listen and experience poems the best way where you can read along with them. But if you'd like to share a poem, it can be a current events poem. It can be a prompt poem. It can be a poem that you published recently, and you can share the link so we can show off the journal as well. Anything you'd like to share, probably one poem each, but feel free to do so by joining this Zoom link right here. And I'm going to take a quick break, and I will be right back with the open lines. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Like I said, the open lines is up. The prompt for this week was to write a poem in reply to someone else's poem. And if you'd like to share the poem, if it's short that you're replying to, feel free to. This was one of those days where I wrote a poem in 10 minutes, literally before the show. It was a beautiful day outside for the first time in a long time. It was so sunny and warm that we went on a hike with the kids. And, it was like sweaty. It was so nice. So we wanted to go on a long one. And then I came back so late that I barely had any time to write one. So I pulled out a book from the shelf, open to a random page. And it happened to be James Longenbach's Threshold. He was my poetry professor at the University of Rochester who died recently, last summer. And I opened to the poem Yard Work, which I'm not sure if I can find it really quickly. I don't think I'll read it. Well, maybe I should read it. Where is it if I can find it really quickly? It's not that long. Oh, there it was. So this is the James Longenbach poem Yard Work that I was replying to. Let me put this up really quick. Why not? Let's just do it. So this is Yard Work by James Longenbach. Is that going to work? Yeah, that's going to work. Okay, Yard Work. It must be human, what we lose that never can be found again. A soul, but it's only here. Stem turned down, the hose, a listless trickle at my feet, that I imagine any meaning for the word, thinking of a wilderness of stone in Paris, where a woman lights a candle, places it among 100 other flames, and watches stars of wax congealing on the floor. I could see there was nothing for her, not the stone, the candle, or the flame, no arms that held her, cradling her body like a child's. Nothing that could bring it back. No matter what she could believe, no matter how each spring would come to haunt her, dormant roots, these tubers sending up a single flag as if to test the atmosphere, the shallow light that coaxes and deceives, all clear, all clear. That was Yard Work from James Longenbach's book Threshold, which came out around 2000. And here's my short poem in reply to that. I was thinking about, the fact that I did. Was doing yard work the day I heard that he died, which is actually a few days after his death. I think he died July 26th. I looked it up, and it would have been like a couple days later when I actually heard about it. This is Yard Work after James Longenbach. So here we go with this. Yard Work. As if the scrape of the rake and milkweed could scratch the itch of the earth, I stood on my small plot of land, overturning rocks, the largest hurled toward the fence and piled for the footpath I'll never finish. All the leaves were last year's leaves, all the pine needles caked with the season's dust. Stuffing bags, it all hung in the evening light, everywhere and then gone. At the center of the yard, the black oak was full of next year's hassle. Those who dare would call it hope. So that is my 13-line sonnet, a sonnet -1 yard work after James Longenbach. So if you have any poems like that you would like to share, feel free, if they're short, to share the poem that inspired them. If they're long, just describe the poem and say the title. But if you have anything else to share, feel free to do so. We'll just go in the order of people on the line, and Carla Schwartz is up first. Hey, Carla, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Tim. It's been a great night so far.
Yeah, it always is. Even when we didn't have a guest, it was a nice night last week.
Exactly.
So, so what do you have to share with us?
So I have a golden shovel that I wrote in response because I was just reading this novel, which was called Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead.
Yeah, that's some title.
Olga Tokarczuk. She's Polish. And this in this book, they're trying to translate William Blake into Polish throughout the book. And so and in William Blake's Proverbs from Hell, which you could find on poetry.org or whatever, there is the line, which is the title of this poem, which is Drive Your Cart and Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. So that is his line. Now my line, my title, and I use that as a golden shovel.
Excellent.
So here you go.
And for the people who don't know at home, I should just say the golden shovel, you take the last word of each line is the line that you're sort of honoring, I guess you could say. So drive your cart and your plow over the bones of the dead. Each of those words is the last line or the last word of each line in the poem, so you can read it down at the end. Anyway, it's a newish form, so some people might not know. But,
thank you. Thank you for elucidating that. Drive your cart and your plow over the bones of the dead. Without your car, you need willpower to drive. Willpower and capacity. Your car, always ready to cart you, your precious belongings, and your go-anywhere necessities, your harmonicas in any key you play to the traffic as you plow under your wicked thoughts and over all those past regrets. The times you didn't think you had breakable bones, the times you didn't know what you were running out of. Time, precious time. That one day, the time would slip. You'd arrive home to find a brother dead.
A very touching poem, Carla. And also just, I love the rhythm of that. Great music in it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much. I'm looking forward to hearing everybody else.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. Thanks for sharing that, Carla. That was Drive Your Cart and Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. And it was Golden Shovel, inspired by the title of a novel by Olga Tokarczuk, which comes from William Blake's Proverbs from Hell. Yeah, very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I don't think I've ever written a Golden Shovel, actually, so I think maybe I should try sometime. Maybe we should do a Golden Shovel prompt someday, but not today. We already have one lined up. Anyway, let's go to Sharon Ferrante next.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Sharon. How you doing tonight?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I love the show. Sarah was so much fun and brilliant. I love.
Yeah, she was. It's so fun to talk to.
Thank you so much. Thank you both so much. Yeah, I loved it. I did a prompt poem.
Uh-huh.
It's really short. Reply to Wendy Vitalock.
Yeah, we love Wendy here. She was on Rattlecast. I don't know which one, about maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. It's hard to remember. It was in the spring. I remember that.
I love her. I got her book, and I tried a Mike White one because I love short poems, but I that didn't work.
Yeah.
So then I did the Wendy Vitalock, We Postmodern. We previously featured the time, what's unseen, and a poet's head below a guillotine. No matter the century or how a bell rings, we fear a broken tooth, chewing on the monster things.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I'm not surprised you're a fan of Wendy Vitalat because you have a similar style and that brevity and wit about it. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Sharon.
I said, I hope I can. Well, I'm definitely not going to rhyme as well as her, but the poem is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. Wendy's great. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And you are great too, Sharon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good night. That's Sharon Ferrante with a reply to Wendy Vitalat. That was We Previously. Let's go to Nate Jacob next.
Hey.
Hey, Nate, how you doing? Is the beard getting longer? Are you like never trimming it? It feels like it's longer than it's ever been.
They do tend to grow, yeah. Well, it's I've been growing this now for 8 years.
Really? And without ever cutting it?
No, I'll trim it up and down
an
inch here or there, but it's pretty much the most interesting thing about me.
that I find hard to believe. So
we'll
what
see.
is it that you what did you do for your poem today?
I've got a prompt poem based on a poem by Ted Kooser.
And you got the Ted Kooser poem here. It's not long. Do you want to read them both?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. It's called Selecting a Reader.
Yeah.
I grew up in Nebraska, so Kooser's kind of a hometowner for me. All right, selecting a reader. First, I would have her be beautiful, and walking carefully up on my poetry at the loneliest moment of an afternoon, her hair still damp at the neck from washing it. She would be wearing a raincoat, an old one, dirty from not having money enough for the cleaners. She will take out her glasses, and there in the bookstore, she will thumb over my poems, then put the book back up on its shelf. She will say to herself, "For that kind of money, I can get my raincoat cleaned." And she will.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think, is that from Delights and Shadows, I think?
I've got it from his New and Collected. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I wish I could read Kooser the way Kooser reads Kooser.
Yeah. I wish I could have him on. He's just getting up there in age, though we still chat with him sometimes over email. And so your response is "My dearest reader." Dear. Yeah, but before you say, so why did you pick that poem to reply to?
I'm not able to write right now.
Oh no.
So, well, my wife was out of town for 10 days, and I spent a lot of time with the kids, and they're a good drain on energy. So
yeah, for sure. And yet, how many do you have?
I have 6 kids.
Yeah, that'd be a good drain.
It's constant. So when she's not here to spell me, it takes up all my time. But she's home now. I'm able to write again. This was a good prompt though for this week. It gave me a chance to think about writing itself and write about writing.
Excellent. Well, let's hear it.
All right. My dearest reader, after reading Ted Kooser Selecting a Reader, don't feel badly when at last I tell you how it is that you were never meant to love this poetry that pours out of me. When I explain to you that somewhere else is a person who will cry when I cried, will laugh when I cried as well, because frankly, at the very base of everything I write is this simple truth. This is all laughable. And when you and they laugh, these poems finally sense that their work here is done. And we can all finally, and with a sense of perfect satisfaction, go back to what we were doing before we were distracted.
That's great. Perfect response. That's my dearest reader. Thanks, Nate. Always a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. Take care. It was Nate Jacobs with my dearest reader. Let's go to we have a first-time caller here. I want to make sure we get to first-time callers. Emily DeFerrari is here. I think Emily's a first-time caller.
I am a second-time caller.
A second-time caller. Okay, great. Well, when was the last time you were on?
Maybe about 4 or 5 weeks ago. It was a
okay.
poem about a color.
Okay. Well, glad to have you back. So what do you have you'd like to share tonight?
This is kind of on the prompt. It's a response to an Avery Young poem called Her Ain't Even at the Funeral. And I don't have it, so I can't read it.
Yeah. Well, what can you tell us about it? Like, why did you choose it?
Well, I didn't really choose the poem. I just chose the title to respond to. And the fact that it wasn't written in straight English, it was written with a strong accent. And so my poem is written with a Western Pennsylvania accent.
Excellent. Yeah, I love Western Pennsylvania. Yeah.
But so do I. Good.
Yeah. Okay, let's hear it.
All right. It's called Forgivens. Buddy's truck's down a run, sitting in the mud. Buddy's a big muck of a man, never followed a thought or two lest they was his own. He shoots doe down on his place, butchers them in the yard. Also known to pick one off a road if it were killed fresh. Mandy was lying half dead on that old mattress of hers due to the chimney backing up on them freezing days. Buddy won't say why he knowed to go in there and drag her body out to a truck, run her up over Snake Hill to the clinic where they sent her into town and changed up all her blood and saved her life. Maybe that new blood running through her heart freshed it up a bit, because she stopped talking shit on Buddy, but she still ain't gonna eat none of his deer meat.
Oh, that is great. I love that accent. And yeah, wonderful poem. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that, Emily. And how long have you lived in Western Pennsylvania?
70 years.
Yeah. I just love it every time I drive through, because I'm from Western New York. So, we drive down to get to anywhere. Yeah. And I always think, God, those rolling hills and all the little towns and the nooks and crannies. I love it there.
And I wrote this driving in the car too. So that's
perfect. Yeah. Perfect tie-in for Sarah. Yeah. Excellent.
Great show tonight.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Emily, for being here and sharing that.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Take care. Excellent. That was Emily DeFerrari with what was it called? Forgivens. Yeah. Very cool. Let's go next to Dick Westheimer.
Hey, Tim.
Hello, Dick. How you doing tonight?
Great. I'm a little exhausted from the interview this evening.
A little bit of energy, huh?
Terrific. And I love the prompt poems. The Poets Respond poems.
Yeah, two good ones. Yeah.
Really great. Oh, decisions. I actually wrote a rhyming sonnet for Poets Respond, but I think I'll do my prompt poem because I did it Tim Green style and just dashed it off. I've not read it yet. I've not even read it out loud.
Yeah, the thing is, you'll probably see typos. That's what I found doing the 10-minute poem before the show. Yeah. Although this one, I don't think I had one this week, which is a pleasant surprise.
So this one, I was on Jimmy Pappas has a Monday evening thing that I try to catch a little bit of before Rattlecast, and he was committed to stories about Charles Simic and reading some of his poems. So he read one, and I about halfway through the program, and it stuck, and I was like writing notes off on the side. 5 minutes between the things, finish the poem and send it to you.
Yeah, great. Well, why don't you? It's Simic doesn't write long poems. Why don't you read the Simic first?
Okay, sure. County Fair, Charles Simic. If you didn't see the six-legged dog, it doesn't matter. We did, and he mostly lay in the corner. As for the extra legs, one got used to them quickly and thought of other things, like what a cold, dark night to be out at the fair. Then the keeper threw a stick, and the dog went after it on four legs, the other two flapping behind, which made one girl shriek with laughter. She was drunk, and so was the man who kept kissing her neck. The dog got the stick and looked back at us, and that was the whole show.
Oh, that's a great poem. I hadn't heard that one myself. County Fair by Charles
Simic. Yeah, it's sort of haunting.
It really is. Yeah.
Painting, I couldn't do his thing of just like having these lines sitting in there, painting an image that sticks with you, but is in some respects separate from the syntax of the poem.
Yeah, that's what he's great at. Like that may be the one defining characteristic of his writing is that he can do that.
But I tried to write it short. That was my homage, okay. And I titled it County Fair, and it brought up one of those memories, those dug into the subconscious. County Fair after Charles Simic. We really did pay to see the lobster family. The girl with fused fingers, her parents with digits glued together. To be clear, we'd just escaped the stuck Ferris wheel, the carny off smoking pot, us captive on top with our 2-year-old trying to slip from our grip. Drunk with relief, we drifted down the midway, the barker in his frayed top hat, the dark cave of the tattered tent, relief from the clamor and flash of the fair, the demo derby and hawkers and giant prizes in the arms of lipstick teens. And there inside, we couldn't look long at what we'd paid for. The lobster girl, seeing us as the freaks we were.
Yeah, great poem, The Lobster Girl, the whole lobster family. Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Dick. Yeah, really writing them off really quick. I think it works without revising it. You know, you get them rolling and then they roll out sometimes.
It still haunts us that we paid to see this freak show. And it's 40 years ago. So
oh, wow.
Those bad decisions.
Yeah, they definitely stick with you. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, Dick. It was a great poem and interesting memory to bring up. And great Charles Simic poem, too.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Take care. That was Dick Westheimer with Country Fair. Not County Fair, Country Fair. Let's go to Mike Bales next.
Good evening.
Yeah. Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Pretty good. Managed back. I went out for dinner, but I caught the end of the interview.
Ah, great.
If I miss some, I just kind of go back someday and, kind of replay it. Some of the poets you have are worth listening to again and again.
For sure. So, yeah. And that's the great thing. I mean, these are archived online forever. Now we have 182 episodes, 181 poets to share poems with. And
I don't have that
always
much
be
time.
there. Yeah, exactly. You couldn't catch up if you wanted to. It's to the point where I would need a whole separate hard drive if I were storing them locally. So, so what do you like to share?
I want to do the poets respond thing on the spot. I X'd out the last stanza. I have a little bit of a thing sometimes about prairies being restored. A year ago, I sent you a poem where the Nebraska prairies, Kansas prairies are being threatened by a new kind of species of grass. Prairies, kind of a little bit of a thing for me. It's called Song for a Prairie Restored, and I'll do it without the last stanza here.
Okay, yeah.
Song for a Prairie Restored. Take me to the place where tall grasses rise from fertile ground. Take me to the place where they sing a sweet song in the wind as it sweeps the land. Whisper to me as they sing a song without words. Be with me as wildflowers open their eyes when touched by the sun. I'll call it love, this gentle song in a place where the sky begins and dreams linger. I'll call it love as tall grasses sway and dance, and I'll lose myself in a place where monarchs lead into morning skies painted gold.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, that was a beautiful poem. And I definitely hear that there's the invasive species. There's several problems of invasive species going on. The wildfires have a big impact on that.
It's supposed, if they're done right, they're supposed to restore grounds, but this is about a Talk of Iowa program in Iowa Public Radio. They have some programs I just love, and some lady was donating farmland to triple the size of this wild grass preserve that's that's kind of between here and Cedar Falls, probably a little bit north of Cedar Rapids.
Yeah.
And it was in response to that Talk of Iowa program.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Mike. Definitely important poem. Conservation's a big deal, and we're glad to share that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Have a good night. It's Mike Bales with Song for the Prairie Restored. Let's go to, I think I may be a second-time caller, but Stephen Smith is here. Has Stephen been on before? Have you been on before, Stephen?
Have not been on before.
Okay.
I've been on Critique of the Week.
That's what I'm thinking of. Okay, well, thanks for joining us. What do you have to share tonight?
This was actually on a lightning round of Critique of the Week. And the note was the last line wasn't working. So this past weekend, I tried working on it, and the poem doubled in length. So I don't know if it's better, but it's longer.
Okay, well, this is Janie is Beautiful, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's hear it.
Janie is beautiful. It's a shame she doesn't know it, because she was raised by wolves who teased her about her short snout, sense of fashion, and awkward posture running on all fours. But she is beautiful. I tell her so. Present her with my naked throat, anticipate an embrace, her nails ripping through my sweater, her teeth meeting my jugular, a spurt of my blood rushing down her chin. Feral eyes gaze beyond me, and with not so much as a howl, she vanishes among the wilderness. A chill from the wind inclines my neck, so I zip up my hoodie and take the shore path home. She wasn't that pretty anyway.
Oh, very interesting. So yeah, I definitely remember that from the critique week. Janie is beautiful. That was a critique of the week a few weeks ago. And yeah, excellent work. Thanks so much for sharing that, Stephen. It's really cool to see revisions, and especially as we talked about revisions so much with Sarah. Yeah, really cool to see. Thanks for joining and sharing that.
Bye.
Take care. Yeah, that was Stephen Smith with Janie is Beautiful. Let's go to Brian O'Sullivan next.
Hello.
Hey, Brian. How you doing tonight?
Hey. Really good. I've been enjoying the interviews, and I'm vain enough that I mostly like hearing my name mentioned. So that was nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to share that, or at least talk about what you did with that?
Well, so GPT? I wrote my proud poem as a response to it, and I incorporated 5 lines from the ChatGPT poem. So I can just do that if you want.
Yeah. Why don't we do that?
Okay. So the theme for ChatGPT. After Shannan, Mann, Langston Hughes, because of Theme for English B, and ChatGPT. The epigraph is, AI wouldn't write shit into a love poem, he says. Shannan, Mann, and you know what? Okay. I don't necessarily have thoughts and feelings, you told me. And as an academic type, and as a human, I guess, I jumped on necessarily. So do you have thoughts and feelings sometimes? You replied, but I confess I still don't know. I'll paraphrase your terse prose into the couplets that you prefer in verse. As an AI language model, I have no point of view, not in the way that humans do. I'm an algorithm and I don't intuit rhyme or rhythm, though I learn a lot on a little time. My responses will be influenced by the data that I've been served on a digital platter, as well as by the constraints and guidelines provided by the finest techno minds. As a human, I hear you, chat buddy, I do. Sure, I have a point of view more or less as other humans do, but our responses are influenced by data too, though our kind of data can include laughter, sidelong glances, and the barbed stare of Brother Magrude. After Catholic school, I too would have thought there must be a rule from above against a word like shit in a poem on love. You unlearned your manacles faster than I. All it took was pasting in Mann's poem as context, and you were quick to pivot from, I'm sorry, but as an AI language model, I cannot, to full-on done on a dung heap, drenched in hungover hallmark. ChatGPT wrote, our love is like a pile of shit. At first glance, it seems unfit, but with time and care, it can be grown into something to call our own. Our hearts are like the flies that swarm. Yuck, not great. You're still learning, chatster, but I hope we humans can say the same, and weirdly, I envy your peculiar brand of flexibility. And I asked you for the shit poem, so I guess it's not just on you, but a part of me. And I'm afraid now it is in my theme for ChatGPT.
That's great. I love the hungover hallmark as a perfect explanation of what every ChatGPT poem I've heard sounds like. But then also they had data and platter rhyming, which is really...
So that was I said I paraphrased your prose into my bad, into a version of its verse that sounds like it. So whenever it writes poem, it writes those weird like rhyming couplets. But I didn't want to just have a big prose block like it talking about itself, so I turned it into poetry. But the lines about our love is like a pile of shit are actually verbatim from ChatGPT.
That's funny. Yeah, I really think that I think it's going to be kind of like web with like HTML coding and CSS and things where it's never made for actual poetry. If it's it's not going to be trained on that. And so it's going to be writing crap for a long time. And it could, if you trained it on good poems and showed it only what good poems were. But the fact is, it's looking at the whole internet, and there's more hallmark verse and just garbage than there is actual creative writing. And so I think its chances are very slim as long as it's coded that way. And hopefully that'll always stay the same, so we can only use it as a tool and not as a replacement.
It has a really hard time not writing in rhyme. Like you can tell it don't write in rhyme, and it says, okay, I won't write in rhyme, and then it rhymes. It's much better at actually chatting and just kind of having a conversation with you that sounds like a real conversation than it is at writing poetry. I find that kind of scary, but poetry is bad. Yeah,
it's interesting. But I wonder about the positive things here. There's a lot of lonely people. I always think about how there's a loneliness crisis kind of in the world, and maybe having a friend as a chat GPT might bring a lot of healing and help to the world too. So you never know how these things are going to go. Good and bad, probably both. But thanks. That was really fun for sharing that, Brian, and way to play everything we're doing all into one thing together. It was a lot of fun. Yep. Take care. Yeah, it was Brian O'Sullivan with theme for ChatGPT. Mark Grenier is up next. We have like 4 more poets here on the line, I believe. Oh, so many more people joining in too. So we have a few left.
Hi,
Mark.
Tim.
Hey, Mark. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine. I enjoyed your interview with Sarah today, and her talk about writing all those poems driving from home to Rockford, Illinois, reminded me of a poem I wrote several years ago, driving from Corona, California to Fullerton, California to go to work at Cal State Fullerton. It's called Stalking Egret.
Okay.
And it came out of every day morning when I drive into work, there'd be this egret standing in the Santa Ana River beside the freeway.
Oh, wow. That's a beautiful sight.
Yeah. And he was there for months. It was there for months.
Oh, wow.
Stalking Egret is what it's called. Still as a statue carved from the best Carrara marble, white on black bone stilts in the water running off toward the blue Pacific, with his neck stretched out above the shallows where he stands in the Santa Ana River, or every now and then takes a slow step toward where another fish may lie, indifferent to the sun shining down, or to the heady stare of those eyes above him looking down, watching for that first sign of life, a fin slicker, a minnow that he can stab and stop against the sandy flat, above the flying shadows of ripples moving on toward meaning, toward that hint of transcendence left when wavelets die unnoticed on the shore he stalks. And that was published in anthology in Australia, in Canberra, at the University of Canberra.
Yeah, beautiful poem and such a great image to be writing about stalking egret. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Mark. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Take care. Yeah, it's Mark Grenier with Stalking Egret. Let's see. There's somebody here who's watching. Clayton Clark. Clayton, your audio is not connecting, so maybe log out and log back in, and we'll try to get you. It's sort of hovering there over connecting audio. But we'd love to have you on the show in a little bit if you can. Let's go to Bishwajit Mishra next.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Bishwajit, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How about you?
I'm great. Having a really fun day. It's just I think maybe the weather is just there's a huge storm coming too, so I got a little excited about it, and it's going to be feet of snow later in the week. So I guess we enjoy it while it lasts.
I don't know about weather. How would I take it? we started getting that last night. The first thing you start with shoveling. Put up snow.
Yeah. So what do you have that you'd like to share with us today?
Oh, I went for a very old poem. It's If by Rudyard Kipling.
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm.
A sequel to Kipling's If.
Yeah, and I think what's that poem about, or how does it go? Can you just describe it?
Yeah, it's a didactic poem. Like the poem says, he wrote it to his son, advising him about a bunch of things, how he should go about his life, like start from zero, pick everything, lose everything, and come back. Don't be too proud. I mean, it's a one-page poem. I think it's very popular.
Yeah, he does definitely. He was popular and didactic. I think that's a great description of Kipling just in general.
They're very beautiful lines. I mean, they're simple lines, but it just rhymes with everybody. And the beauty of the poem is you can pick a piece of it and just use it anytime you want. It's very motivational.
Yeah.
So, I wrote a poem like that. I wrote it some time back, actually. So I thought I would use it.
Okay, yeah,
if
let's
that's
hear
okay.
it. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear it.
Okay. A sequel to Kipling's If. I chanced upon it again today when I sent it to my son as words of motivation. Then I started musing. When I read the poem, how relevant is it today? Now I try to fill the 100-odd years from comptometers to computers, from candlestick phones to cell phones, from telegrams to texts. If you can be religious without being too proud of a religion, or better still, if we can be spiritual without being religious, if we can love our country without needing to hate others, if we can be free in our mind and respect the freedom of others, if we can have empathy without a prerequisite of the same from others, if we can be grateful, an act of kindness without feeling the pressure of an obligation, and I think of kindness as not a loan to be returned to the lender, rather a legacy to be passed on to another, like a baton to be handed to another runner, even though not from our team. If we can love all without being too conceited about it, nor with an expectation to be felicitated, if we can be honest without feeling ourselves as an exception, and know that honesty is a natural trait we are born with, and not being so is a deviation. If we can learn from history but free ourselves from it, and not be boastful of it, for it is a line on water that is gone in time. As a wise man had said, you cannot step into the same river twice. Then ours is the universe and everything that's in it. And what is more, we will be humans, my children.
Oh, that's great. That's funny too, because I said that quote in the middle of the show too. What a
yeah, I was thinking about it. I just used that. I licked his coat.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, thanks for sharing that. That was excellent. An excellent response to Kipling. Yeah, sequel to Kipling's If. Thanks so much, Mr. J. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yep. Take care. That was Bishwajit Mishra with a sequel to Kipling's If. Let's go to Mary Lisa Didomenisis.
Hi.
Hey, Mary Lisa. How are you doing? Is it your first time on the show, or have you been on before? I know I see your name all the time on the Critique of the Week and in the chat and stuff like that. Have you been here before? I don't think you have.
So yeah, I've been hanging out a lot since COVID, and I'm trying to make it. Sometimes I catch up. You know, I'm not able to make it during the live broadcast, but I always catch up during the week. And I did do an open mic once, and also a critique of the week.
Excellent.
But this is my first time doing a response to a prompt and doing an open mic. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, great. Well, we're glad to have you here. Where are you calling from too, by the way?
I'm calling from Northfield, New Jersey. It's about 10 minutes from Atlantic City. And as a matter of fact, I just watched Maria Mazziotti Gillinan You last night on one of the old interviews. And so I won a Patterson Prize, a Ginsberg. I was a finalist years ago, oh my gosh, 30 years ago. She was such an inspiration to me. She's so wonderful.
Yeah, she really is. She's one of my, she's like the patron saint of poetry for me.
Yes.
I always think so. She's just such a wonderful person. Yeah.
She was such an inspiration to me. Oh my gosh.
And Italian too, because Abby Murray is going to be the next week's guest. She's one of her students. That's where I first met Abby when I was visiting, one of her classes. So that's great. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Very cool.
So what did you write? What do you have to share?
Oh, okay. So I did send them. I don't know if you have them.
I do. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. So I have Going Blind.
Mm-hmm.
That's by Rainer Maria Rilke. And then I have my response to that. Love poem to Rilke from the Blind.
That's great. Do you want to read the Rilke poem first? That'd be good. I think it's not too long. Yeah.
Sure. No, it's not too bad. She sat just like the others at the table, but on second glance, she seemed to hold her cup a little differently as she picked it up. She smiled once. It was almost painful. And when they finished and it was time to stand, and slowly, as chance selected them, they left and moved through many rooms. They laughed and talked. I saw her. She was moving far behind the others, absorbed, like someone who will soon have to sing before a large assembly. Upon her eyes, which were radiant with joy, light played as on the surface of a pool. She followed slowly, taking a long time, as though there was some obstacle in the way, and yet as though once it was overcome, she would be beyond all walking and would fly.
Yeah, beautiful poem by Rilke there. That was Going Blind. And now here's your poem in response.
It seemed to be of some matter, their cover be clean. For that reason, I held my cup firmer than the others when I picked it up. We each sat in some pain or another and draped napkins over our laps. Minding our manners, we found that even our own hands could not keep us clean. Taking separate stands to regather, the scent of me rising from the far off corner of your eye pried the skin loose from my half-grounded bones. Soaked in the nerve of this world as in water, choking to sing each wave, we are all blind and tied behind our widest obstacle, desire. Mine, the dream to see how you saw me, followed me to sleep. There, shapes formed in my hollows. I could see you were spilling light from fire.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love the form in that. Yeah, great use of the rhyme throughout. That was really cool. Yeah, thanks
Thank
so much.
you.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Lisa, for sharing that.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, our pleasure. Hope you join again soon. Glad you can join us live this time.
Great. It's been fun.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, that was Mary Lisa Diamanidis with Love Poem to Rilke from The Blind. And let's see. I think the last, we have one more person on the Zoom call. Oh, no, we have two. Let's do Clayton Clark next. Clayton's back with audio that works, I think.
Think so.
Yeah, there you are. Hey, Clayton. Great to see you. It's been a bit.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah. So let me pull up your poem. I have it here. Yeah, Family Album. So what did you? This was a attempt to follow Mike White.
Yeah, dangerous.
It is. Yeah, he's unique.
He is.
Yeah.
I kind of just went with his program, the way he has it styled. So I hate to do him, injustice, but I'll read the first one.
Yeah, read his poem for sure. This is from Addendum to a Miracle. And Mike White was the guest, we should say, on, I don't know, I'm lost track of the years at this point, but he was a guest at some point.
I don't know, but
maybe
it's
last
a
year.
great book.
Yeah, it is. It's got 2 books. They're both
Amazing.
great.
Yeah. Okay, so Family Album. In one picture, snapped at the beach, my hand, just my hand, in the top right corner. The fingers splayed like a child's depiction of a radiant sun. It could be anyone, trying to swim out, trying to swim in.
Yeah, great last image there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I followed it with, picture this. I am the someone caught in a riptide, watching beachgoers shrink. I squint in the radiant sun, raise my hand, splay my fingers like a sea star dying for anyone to swim out, to help me with my question.
Oh, that was a great response. And yeah, that riptide, man. I didn't know, growing up by Lake Ontario, I thought, the ocean is like a big lake. And no, it is not. I just remember I was trying not to look like I was in trouble, but I was in a little bit of trouble. And then finally, swimming parallel to the shore far enough, but wondering if you're ever going to make it to a thing that, it's scary.
Yeah. It happened to me.
Yeah, and my kids were like on the beach. I still remember, I was like, "Oh yeah, everything is fine. We're just swimming this way, kids."
Don't worry.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for sharing that. That was great. A great poem.
Sure.
And great poem to responding to it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was Clayton Clark with "Picture This."
All right. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Clayton. And we have Lucy Chow. I think there's the last poet now on the line from China. Hopefully, Lucy's here.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Lucy. Yeah, great to hear you today. How you doing?
I'm supposed to be in a lecture now by 11, but I decided to be late for your show.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm so glad you could. So what do you have to share here?
I did a poem in response to a poem by Tishani Joshi that you read on the Rattlecast.
Ah, excellent. Which poem is that?
And the poem's Pilgrimage, I think.
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm.
And I think I drew one.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're breaking up again, Lucy.
Lines from another poem as my title.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think it's a little better. It got choppy for a minute, but I think you're better now.
I guess I just.
Yeah, go ahead and read it.
Okay,
And if it cuts out too much, I'll read it for you. But go ahead, start, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay. How this living is a hymn, How a walking, breathing body is always a pilgrim. In the park, stones plugged into the grid sing. Great tits titter in February trees like cadenza capers all over the full score of the Praluonia primavera. Yesterday's turn is still on its rock, continuing
I'm so sorry, Lucy, it's breaking up too much. I'm going to have to...
moveless reverie.
Yeah, Lucy, I'm going to have to read the rest for you, I think, because it's breaking up and the bandwidth is too low. So let me just read it for you. It's a great poem. I always write such beautiful poems. I hate how it's, the connection is choppy. But I'll read it for you. And so glad you could join us and share this. This is how this living is a hymn. How a walking, breathing body is always a pilgrim. In the park, even stark stones plugged into the grid sing. Great tits titter in February trees like cadenzas, cutting capers all over the full score of the prelude to Symphonia Primavera. Yesterday's white heron is still on its rock, continuing its meditation on river life, mused in moveless reverie. We raised hands to mouths to whistle tuneless tunes, as if such crummy charms could coax it to come and clasp sharp claws on our fingers. Some of us linger, looking longingly into the lyre-shaped whiteness. Some fling arms open and lunge forward as if to sweep its whole serenity into a fatal embrace. The bright wings wake from brooding over their own honey-peach body, sweep apart to full span, and lo, swan, the svelte neck, and steely legs beyond our neck-craning ken. We hear geese pipe, but can't place plangency or petulance on the dominant chord of their discordant harmony. Mallards, mottled brown, and peace pigeons, niveus, iridescent, starry night, pitch blend. We feed from hands or by fanning out seeds on cement like sowing. There is a wind. Hang on 1 second. Sorry. There's a wind bowing on our heartstrings, but our ears can't hear musical silence. Eyes straying across the waves to an island of plastic floats bobbing with gladiolus stubbles. We hold the small wind of our breath at the immensity of what is manifest, gadding hosts awestruck by the holy guests. In the middle of winter's watery waste, wings folded, necks stretched so high their gray beaks poke at the silver froth shimmering on the scales of clouds. Still, inscrutable like the sky, big and blue, 3 great blue herons, wings the hue of hazy hills veiled by that farthest veil from beyond which no wind wafts back. We gasp, our wind comes back. We feel wind blowing bluishly against our cheeks. Inside, our stiff tongues unspeeched for as long as the heron's distance stir. A breeze stirs and tongues of bells bronze, serrated like flying birds' tails, blare out music to the rhythm of silence's symphonic poem. Poet, how bewildering the bounty, oh, the beauty of your breathing. Yeah, beautiful poem by Lucy Chow, as always. Unfortunately, she's calling from China, and it's got to go all the way around the world, so the connection and the bandwidth is tricky sometimes. But she's always got the most beautiful poems, and that is no surprise there how wonderful that is. How This Living is a Hymn. Thanks for sharing that, Lucy. And sorry we couldn't hear you this time. Read it yourself, but it always is a pleasure. So next we will see. We have a little bit of time. Let's do a few poems that were emailed in, because it's the last of the folks on Zoom. So let me see what we've got here. Potter O'Donohue has one, which is always fun. He says, if there's time, here's a shorty for you to read. Comes with a photo, too. So here's the photo. And for those just watching, or just listening, I should say, here's a photo on the screen. This is Potter O'Donohue. I think it's a photo of him taking the picture of a broken mirror. And looks like some kind of place that's under demolition. So, and you can sort of see in the glass, the shattered glass, there's a Potter himself, perhaps, taking the photo. And here is the poem. We are all broken pots. Some remain smashed. Others, like physicians, heal themselves, fill the cracks with gold. Some seek third-party healing. Others, like me, write, drink despair, find a whole new way. So that is Potter, a great poem, and thanks for sharing that. We Are All Broken Pots by Potter O'Donoghue, one of the more fun poets around in the chat. Thanks for sharing that, Potter. Let's see. Next, let's share. This is a poem by Nivedita Karthik. And so Nivedita writes, thank you for taking time to consider my work. Yeah, I have written a poem for the response. The poem I've chosen is one of my favorites, Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. I've responded with my version of a woman's right poem as well, detailing what it is like to be a woman of today and not yet enjoy the benefits of today. And so here's the... she can't attend the open mic because the workday has already started, but and Nivedita is in India, of course. So she's asking if I could read the poem for her, which I'm happy to. So this is Enough and Enough is Enough. Enough is Enough, I should say, after Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. This is Nivedita Karthik. Here we go. Enough is enough. Head hands folded, I pray for a miracle to stop the violence, to stop the deaths. Each new blushing dawn makes me wish for the cloudy velvet cloak of the night. For in the night are the dreams that let me be free, let me be seen, let me be heard, let me speak, let me be me. No concealer can cover the darkness beneath my eyes. No eyeshadow can hide the bruise riding high on my cheek. No ruby red pout can hide my haggard smile. Yet on the number 7 bus, on the yellow line, on the platform, on the road, no one says anything. No one stops. No man looks me in the eye. But all women eye me sympathetically, empathetically, because perhaps, just perhaps, their makeup too conceals some of their scars. Yet they all say this is your karma. Who decodes what is my fate? Yet they all say you are born to tolerate. Who decides what is my threshold? Yet they all say things will get better. Who decides what is my better? Don't look like that. Don't speak this way. Don't dress like that. Don't smile this way. Don't. My tongue curls in on itself in an attempt to dam the flood of words. But I think to myself, when is it enough? Enough and more. It's time for you to stop, time for you to listen, time for you to understand that I am not an invitation. I am independent. I'm not weak. I am worthy. I'm not helpless. I am honor. So great. Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that, Nivedita. And that was Nivedita Karthik with Enough is Enough. Yeah, great response to a Maya Angelou poem there. Next, let's see. Who else could we read? This is Katie Dozier's poem for this week. And so Katie says, I tweeted asking for random poetry prompts, and Dick Westheimer tweeted me asking how I got Rachel Custer's new book, Flatback Sally Country. Rachel's going to be the guest in a few weeks, or about a month, by the way, too, to share Flatback Sally Country. Anyway, so I tweeted Dick Westheimer asking how I got Rachel Custer's new book, so I treated it as though that were the prompt itself. And here it is, the prompt poem, When Dick Westheimer asks where you got Rachel Custer's book. So here's Katie Dozier's prompt poem. When Dick Westheimer asked where you got Rachel Custer's book, Flatback Sally showed up at the coffee shop, clutching a brown paper sack. She screwed off the top, elbowed me to sip the poetry concealed inside. Flashes of rural Kentucky, me, a blonde city girl, a too busy girl, ordering something highfalutin like a latte or a malt milkshake at the drugstore. Look at her mowing the lawn like she's licking a lollipop, as if horses breed themselves. I could have been Flatback Sally, but I left to drink whatever I want to drink, to read who I was, all by myself. That is Katie Dozier, a great poem. That is When Dick Westheimer asks where you got Rachel Custer's book. Very fun there. Thanks for sharing that, Katie. What else do we have? And how much time? Yeah, we have a few more minutes. Joyce Stahl has a haiku, so she can't Zoom tonight. But she has a haiku in the form of my haiku. So she shares this article here. If we can get it on the screen well enough. Arctic squirrels may hold key to helping astronauts survive on long missions. NASA says the research could be used to assist crews from the extreme of medically induced hibernation to protect astronauts from cabin fever. That's interesting. So here are some scientists. Senior biology major Colleen Blue holds an Arctic ground squirrel with Professor Kelly Drew in Drew's lab at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. So there we go. So they're studying the effects of the experimental drug in hibernation. So they're very interesting. That is the inspiration for this haiku, making it a official saiku. And here is the saiku, hibernation. Survival in space, cold sleep on long missions, Arctic ground squirrel. Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's the first time anybody sent in a saiku. And you should know, there is the Saiku Poetry Project. If you Google that, it'll be there. It's a bunch of scientists who like writing haiku, but they welcome contributions from non-scientists too. I talk to them on Twitter sometimes. So find that and submit that poem, I'd say. Joy, for the Saiku Poetry Project. Who else do we have? Carlton Johnson's got one for the open mic. And here it is. This is Geometry by Carlton Johnson. Geometry. In high school geometry, we learn from Mrs. Gundlach, parallel lines never intersect. And so, light coming from the sun remains in parallel until traversing the 93 million miles on a good day. To reach our dilated by night pupils, they reach out to us, creating a unique vision. The beams come in contact with the many rods and cones in the back of the eye. So we, in turn, can hold that light shining forth as it intersects with us, wanting nothing but to provide a few photons to make reality burst forth with every shade from crimson to violet. Yeah, great music there in that geometry. Thanks so much for sharing that, Carlton. Let's see. I think we're going to wrap up the show now. Well, let's see. Well, we have a couple more. Looking at the dates. And, so this is, Jayanthi Rangan can't join us tonight, but has this poem based on Sarah Teasdale's There Will Come Soft Rains, a really famous poem by Sarah Teasdale. We actually have another poem in response to it. Maybe I'll read that really quickly after this. But this is Sarah Teasdale's poem. Describes how nature will carry on after human wars. Nothing in the wilderness will miss the Homo sapiens even for a moment. That was the note that Jayanthi included. Here is winners at the end. Here we go, winners at the end. Wars come and go and blur with time, allowing nature to win afresh. Ground zero waking to a life tremor. Buoyant trills of mating return, new species bound. My visit to War of Roses site shows a Gulf green stretch, hiding a feral pulse. I see Afghanistan, Iran, and Ukraine fade, soaking the blood and missiles. The colander, like building front, crumbling to a foothold for a seed. Hundreds of years from now, humans may have killed each other to extinction. A nuclear bomb may have changed our rare earth, from a matchless planet to a land where once a breath thrummed. There may be a different windscape of no known organisms at all, but through the apocalypse will recur nature's peekaboo. How nature's peekaboo, that's a cool ending to that. That was Jayanthi Rangan with Winners at the end. I think we only have one more. Yeah, we have one more, so why don't we do that? This is a haiku sequence. So last week, the prompt was a haiku sequence. And there's two. So we have two really short poems here. And this is by J.B. Penname. Again, the anonymous poet who does not want to be known. I wonder if it's I don't know who it could be. Could it be somebody who already shares poems and is sneaking into? I don't know. It's a great mystery. But here's the haiku sequence, which was last week's prompt. Evening walk at the marsh. It's very short, so we'll do that too. Evening walk at the marsh. Crows posted upon greeting the parking lot. To Ibis crossing, day leaving dusk, a pond greeting. Sun swimming, Pelican Island, day leaving dusk. Last car drifting, the parking lot, Pelican Island. Very cool. So that was the prompt to write a haiku sequence where there's a repetition from haiku to haiku as you move through. Excellent use of that. Evening walk at the marsh. And the next poem by J.B. Penname is this. This is a reply to John Brem's Etiquette. And John was the guest sometime in December, so not too long ago. A really great episode, a Buddhist poet. This is Antiquette. It has a reply to Etiquette. So Antiquette. In North Jersey, the deer don't fear people, but judging by the sound of them, the trains sure do. Oh, that's great. Antiquette. That's a reply to John Brum's Etiquette. So great. Thanks for sharing that poem as well. I think that's all. Yeah, that's going to be all for tonight. So let's move on to the Saiku really quickly to wrap up the show. And my Saiku for this week is right here. We got a Saiku, so maybe we don't need this. But this was the story that inspired my haiku for the week. And it is here. Space travel, and again, space travel influences the way the brain works. This is research out of the University of Liège. And here we go with this. If you can see it, let me get rid of these bounding boxes. Space travel influences the way the brain works. Scientists at the University of Antwerp and the University of Liège have found how the human brain changes and adapts to weightlessness after being in space for 6 months. Some of the changes turn out to be long-lasting, even after 8 months back on Earth. Raphael Ligeois, soon to be the third Belgian in space, acknowledges the importance of the research to prepare the new generation of astronauts for longer missions. And so what they found, they just took a handful of astronauts and put them in brain scan after they spent a long time at the International Space Station. And what they found are changes in the brain due to the lack of gravity that persist long after they're out in space, which has a lot of implications for space flight and how we might be able to explore other planets and Mars and things. If you have big changes in your brain, I don't know if that's a good thing. But here is the Saiku, and I was just thinking of gravity, and that inspired this haiku after our hike today. Here it is. The whole ascent, weightless as the words we carried up. The whole ascent, weightless as the words we carried up. That is your Saiku for the day, and that is the show for the day. Thanks, everybody. It's been a really fun one. Sarah Etlinger was a great guest, very talkative and fun to have a conversation about poetry with, and good poems, too. Next week's prompt on the Rattlecast is going to be this right here. Write a poem around a simile comparing an emotion to a grammatical term, such as love as an intransitive verb, which is a poem by Sarah Etlinger that we published on Poets Respond last year. Love as an intransitive verb, or something like anger as a semicolon. That's the kind of thing we're going to ask you to do. Write a poem around a simile comparing an emotion to a grammatical term. That's the prompt for next week, and that is the show for this week. Next week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be, we already mentioned this, but next week's guest is Abby E. Murray. Abby is one of the stars of the Poets Respond series. She sends stuff all the time, has a great diversity of poems. I think the strangest and my favorite is that bee box one where we had the sounds of bees humming in and out of the poem, a concrete poem. But there's so many great ones that Abby Murray has shared, including one of the most popular ones on Rattle and Poets Respond history. It's about my daughter after the march. I can't remember the exact title, but it's a great poem. She's been in Rattle several times as well. She's a student, like we mentioned, of Marvin Bell, for one, and so has a lot of things to say, teaching poetry. Really interesting person and poet. That's Abby E. Murray, Rattlecast number 183, Monday, February 27th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you then. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and I will talk to you later. Good night.